Lucas Bennett had spent the last 5 years carving his name into the legal world, far from the suffocating expectations of his influential medical family in Charleston, South Carolina. Once the golden boy of prep school debate clubs and Ivy League lectures, he'd been branded a disgrace the moment he walked away from medical school. His father, Dr. Robert Bennett, had built a legacy of white coats and surgical miracles. Lucas chose black robes and gavels instead. Now, at 33, the youngest judge ever appointed to the federal district in the Southeast, Lucas wielded authority with precision and quiet resolve. The marble columns of the courthouse had become his home, its echoing halls a far cry from the polished mahogany of his family's estate. For years, the Bennetts pretended he didn't exist. No photos, no mentions at holidays, no seat at the table. Lucas didn't need their approval, or so he told himself. But when an ivory envelope bearing the Bennett family crest landed on his desk, memories came flooding back. Inside was an invitation to his brother Nathan's wedding, along with a handwritten note from his mother, urging him to attend. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a challenge. And Lucas had never turned one down. Lucas Bennett stared at the wedding invitation as if it were an unexploded device. The embossed Bennett family crest in gold seemed to mock him from his desk. 5 years of silence, and now this, his clerk, Grace, had likely thought it was just another social event among the city's elite. But Lucas recognized the stakes. The note from his mother was brief, but loaded. Lucas, please come. I miss you. Nathan and your father don't know. I'm writing. Love, Mom. That night, after a grueling custody case, Lucas poured a glass of his grandfather's favorite bourbon and sat in the quiet of his kitchen. Memories crept in Thanksgiving 5 years ago, when Nathan had raised his glass in front of a room full of relatives and called Lucas a disappointment who would never contribute anything meaningful to the world. Not one person had defended him. He'd walked out and never looked back. But this wedding wasn't just about Nathan. Luca had Googled Nathan's fiancée, Amelia Carter, and discovered she was a public interest attorney. Her cases to non-rights, community preservation, mirrored the values Lucas championed from the bench. She'd even appeared in his courtroom 8 months ago, winning a case with skill and precision. She hadn't seemed to recognize his last name then. The next day, Lucas drove to Oak Hill Cemetery, where his grandfather was buried. The man had been the only Bennett who truly understood him. Kneeling by the grave, Lucas remembered the last gift his grandfather had pressed into his hand, a sealed envelope with the words, "Open this when you're ready to face them again." He'd left it untouched for 3 years. That evening, Lucas finally broke the seal. The letter was in his grandfather's careful script. True power isn't making others feel small. It's standing tall without pushing them down. The words struck deep. This wasn't about revenge. It was about presence walking into that estate as the man they said he could never become. He RSVP'd with 4 simple words. "I'll be there, Lucas." The week before the wedding, his mother called. Her voice trembled as she admitted, "Your father and Nathan still think you declined. I want you there, but please don't come looking for a fight." "I'm not coming to pretend either," Lucas replied. That conversation changed something. For the first time, his mother seemed to see him as more than the son who broke tradition. And when she surprised him with his grandfather's old pocket watch taken from Nathan's dresser because he never appreciated it, Lucas felt the weight of both legacy and choice. Standing before his packed overnight bag, Lucas knew exactly how he'd walk into Rosemont Estate, not as the outcast they remembered, but as the judge they couldn't ignore. The gardens of Rosemont Estate were a riot of white roses and silk-draped arches when Lucas arrived for the rehearsal dinner. His forest green suit, a suggestion from his best friend Ryan, was sharp enough to turn heads, but understated enough to say, "I'm here for business, not theatrics." The gold of his grandfather's pocket watch caught the last light of the setting sun as he stepped out of his sedan. His mother was the first to spot him. Relief softened her features as she embraced him briefly, though her eyes darted toward the lawn where the wedding party gathered. "They haven't seen you yet," she whispered. Lucas barely had time to reply before a clear, confident voice called out, "Your Honor, Amelia Carter." Nathan's fiancée crossed the lawn toward him, beaming. She gave a slight, respectful nod, a habit Lucas remembered from her courtroom appearances. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said warmly. Conversations around them died, mid-sentence. Nathan turned from the floral arch he'd been inspecting, his smile faltering into confusion, then draining into something sharper shock, then panic. "Judge Bennett is a family friend," Amelia offered to the onlookers, oblivious to the shift in atmosphere. "Not exactly," Lucas said evenly, locking eyes with Nathan. The tension was instant, electric. Nathan strode over, his voice tight. "Lucas, this is unexpected." "I RSVPD," Lucas replied, his tone calm but unyielding. Amelia's brow furrowed. "Wait, you two know each other." Before Nathan could answer, their mother stepped in. "They're brothers." Amelia froze, the pieces snapping into place. "Brothers." She turned to Nathan, her voice lowering, but no less sharp. "You told me your brother dropped out of medical school and disappeared." "That he was." She stopped short, but everyone could feel the words she didn't say. "A disappointment," Lucas finished for her. "I didn't disappear. I became a judge." Murmurs rippled through the gathered family and guests. Amelia blinked, realization dawning. "You're the Judge Bennett, the one whose ruling in the gray eviction case is being taught in law schools." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't think it was relevant." Note relevant Amelia's voice rose. "I've studied his cases since law school. I argued in his courtroom." She looked from Nathan to Lucas, betrayal etched on her face. "What else haven't you told me?" Nathan's jaw worked, but no answer came. Instead, Amelia slipped the engagement ring from her finger and placed it in his hand. "I need time to think," she said, before walking away toward the guest house without looking back. The murmurs grew louder, some guests openly staring, others retreating in discomfort. Nathan turned to Lucas, anger sparking, satisfied. "You just ruined my wedding." Lucas met his gaze, steady as a verdict. "No, Nathan. Your lies did." The rehearsal dinner that evening was a strained performance forced smiles, clinking silverware, and conversations that tiptoed around the explosion on the lawn. Nathan arrived late, his expression carved from stone. Amelia never appeared. Lucas sat between his mother and Aunt Lillian, answering a stream of newly curious relatives. "So, you really send people to jail?" one uncle asked, half impressed, half scandalized. "When the law requires it," Lucas replied evenly. "But most of my work focuses on resolving disputes, property, custody, elder care, cases where lives can change without a prison sentence." To his surprise, his mother added softly, Lucas was known for finding solutions when others only saw problems. The specificity caught him off guard. It meant she'd been paying attention. Nathan, however, wasn't ready to let go. When a groomsman joked, "Who knew the black sheep would be the star?" Nathan's fork hit the table. "She's not a star," he snapped. He quit when things got hard. Lucas counted to 10, a tactic honed in courtrooms, thick with ego. "I didn't quit because it was hard, Nathan. I left because it wasn't my calling. There's a difference." "That's absurd," Nathan scoffed. "Medicine is our family legacy." "Our family legacy," Lucas said slowly, "is integrity. Or at least, it's supposed to be." The room fell silent. It was then their father, Dr. Robert Bennett, broke, in his voice quieter than Lucas had ever heard. "Nathan, that's not entirely true. You were competitive with your brother from the start. Your mother and I encouraged it. Too much." Nathan stared at him, visibly thrown. "So it's my fault?" "No," their father said, turning his gaze to Lucas. "It's mine. I pushed you both into roles you didn't choose." His tone carried an unfamiliar weight admission. Later, needing air, Lucas wandered into the estate gardens. He found Amelia seated by a reflecting pool, her white dress catching moonlight. "Your mother said this was your grandfather's favorite spot," she murmured. "It was," Lucas said, taking a seat. She hesitated before speaking. "James Nathan built himself up by tearing you down. He admitted it. Said he thought I'd respect him less if I knew his sister was more successful. I don't even know if I'm angrier about the lie or the reason for it." Lucas didn't try to sway her. "Nathan's not a villain. He's afraid of not being perfect, even if it means making someone else the imperfect one." Amelia looked away toward the water. "I need time. But thank you for being honest. And for that West End Community Center case? I grew up there. It saved me." Her words struck him with unexpected force. Even in the years his family had erased him, his work had rippled farther than he realized. For the first time in a long while, Lucas wondered if maybe this wedding weekend wasn't just about proving himself. It might also be about changing how his family saw each other. Morning crept over Rosemont in a pale wash of gold, as if the estate itself were trying to pretend last night had never happened. Lucas laced his shoes and stepped outside before the caterers arrived, needing air that didn't taste like old grudges. The gravel path led him past the pond, past the arbor, back toward the main house, where a shout split the quiet. Dad Nathan's voice, raw and urgent. "Lucas, run." In the library, Dr. Robert Bennett sat slumped in a leather chair. one hand pressed to his chest, the other gripping the armrest with white knuckles. Their mother hovered, pale but focused. A young surgeon from Nathan's team checked a pulse with steady fingers. "I'm fine," their father insisted, breath shallow. "Just a twinge." "Save it," Nathan said, already kneeling, switching into the efficient cadence of a man who'd triaged chaos before. "Pulse irregular. Pain level. 5, their father muttered. 6. His eyes found Lucas over Nathan's shoulder. "Son, come here." Lucas moved close, surprised by how natural it felt to take his father's hand after 5 years of avoiding it. The grip was cooler than he remembered, less iron, more human. "Ambulance is en route," Nathan reported. "We'll need an EKG and labs." "I'll call ahead," Lucas said, phone already in hand. He wasn't a doctor, but he knew systems. Within minutes, hospital intake had the family's details, insurance, and power of attorney copies. The old Lucas would have stayed on the fringes. The man he'd become handled the forms while Nathan handled the medicine. For the first time in years, they worked side by side without competing. At Memorial, the verdict arrived. Angina, medication adjustments, monitoring. Not a mortal blow, a warning shot. In the humming quiet of the waiting room, their mother dabbed at her eyes with a linen handkerchief that once belonged to Lucas's grandfather. "I can't do another decade like the last one," she whispered. "I want my family back." Nathan stared at the floor. The ring Amelia had returned, turning over and over in his palm like a coin that could still land differently. "I did this," he said at last, voice low. "I built myself up by diminishing you." Lucas shook his head. "You didn't cause Dad's heart to misfire, but you do get to decide what we are from here." A beat passed, then another. Finally, Nathan nodded. "Then here's my decision." He looked up, eyes clearer than Lucas had seen since they were kids on a fishing dock. "I'm postponing the wedding. Not canceling my life, postponing the performance. I'm going to take a leave and volunteer with a surgical relief organization through winter. I need to learn who I am without the applause." Their mother exhaled, something like pride loosening her shoulders. "Your grandfather would have called that courage?" They returned to the estate that evening to a garden still wrapped in white ribbon and expectation. Nathan found Amelia by the guest house porch light. Lucas hung back, far enough to give space, close enough to witness the hinge of a future swing. "I'm not asking you to forgive me today," Nathan said, voice steady. "I'm asking for time to become a man who doesn't need to lie to be loved." Amelia's answer was careful, merciful. "Then, take that time. If we're meant to meet again, let it be as equals." As the porch light flicked off, Lucas felt the day settle inside him like a verdict he could live with. The crisis had not mended everything, but it had cracked the old shell just wide enough for something honest to grow. He checked his grandfather's pocket watch, the thin second hand sweeping forward with quiet certainty. Not triumph, opportunity, and for the first time, the Bennett family seemed ready to take it. The weeks after the wedding that wasn't passed in a blur of cautious new rhythms, Lucas returned to his docket, ruling on custody disputes and property battles, while the Bennets slowly began to loosen the grip of their old hierarchy. It started with small things. His mother called on Sundays, not with passive updates, but with questions about his cases and genuine interest in the answers. His father, still recovering, emailed an article on medical ethics with a note, "I'd value your legal perspective." Even Nathan sent a text from Guatemala, a photo of himself in a makeshift surgical tent. "You'd hate the dust, but I think I'm doing something that matters." Lucas replied simply, "I know you are." At work, the momentum shifted too. His rulings began appearing in legal journals, cited for their balance and clarity. Younger attorneys sought him out for mentorship. Grace, his clerk, teased that she should start scheduling Lucas Bennett fan club meetings in his chambers. But the truth was, Lucas wasn't chasing applause. He was learning how to inhabit his role without the old itch to prove anything to the Bennetts. 6 months later, a quiet milestone arrived. A sealed letter from the governor's office confirmed his nomination for the federal appellate bench. Lucas read it alone in his study, the gold pocket watch resting on the desk beside the letter opener. His first instinct was to share it with Ryan, but his second, surprisingly, was to tell his family. That night, over dinner, at his parents' sunlit breakfast nook, he broke the news. His father set down his fork. "The appellate bench," he repeated, the hint of a smile tugging at his mouth. "That's an extraordinary responsibility." Lucas met his gaze. "I know. You'll be good at it, Doctor." Bennett said simply. It was the closest thing to unqualified praise Lucas had ever received from him. And unlike in the past, Lucas didn't feel the need to clutch at it or measure its sincerity. He simply nodded, letting it land where it would. By spring, Nathan was back from his relief work. He had lost weight, carried himself differently, slower, more deliberate. At their first coffee together in years, he admitted, "I used to think being a Bennett meant never admitting you were wrong. Now I think it means admitting it before it's too late." Lucas smiled faintly. Grandfather would have agreed with that. Their relationship wasn't perfect, probably never would be, but the old, brittle competition had softened into something closer to mutual respect. That summer, Lucas visited his grandfather's grave with a copy of his latest published opinion. He placed it beside the headstone, the spring wind ruffling the pages. "You told me to stand tall, without pushing others down," he murmured. "I think I'm finally getting the hang of it." As he left the cemetery, the watch ticked in his pocket each second, a reminder that growth wasn't a single moment of victory, but a series of deliberate choices. And Lucas had no intention of wasting the time he'd been given. 1 year after the wedding, that wasn't what. Lucas stepped into the grand marble foyer of the federal courthouse, the new weight of the appellate robe draping across his shoulders. It was heavier than the district judge's robe physically and symbolically, but he carried it with a steady ease. The man who had once been cut from the Bennett family portrait now shaped rulings that would echo across the region for decades. His first case of the morning was Bennett v. Free. Norland Realty, representing the plaintiff, Amelia Carter. She walked into the courtroom with measured confidence, her own legal aid firm, now thriving. They exchanged a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement of everything that had shifted since Rosemont. During a recess, Amelia approached the bench. "Lucas," she said quietly, "Nathan called last week. He's staying in relief work. Says he's finally where he's supposed to be." Lucas smiled. "Sounds like we both found our place." She hesitated, then added, "He also told me to tell you, thank you, for making him see things differently." That afternoon, Lucas drove to his parents' home for their standing monthly dinner. The once intimidating Bennett estate had changed, no longer a museum of medical trophies, but a warmer space filled with family photographs, some of which, for the first time in years, included him. His father greeted him at the door with a handshake that turned into a brief, awkward hug. Over roast chicken and wine, conversation flowed easily. Nathan's latest stories from the field, his mother's updates on the Legal Aid Foundation board, even a shared laugh over Lucas's first high school debate disaster. It wasn't perfect harmony, but it was authentic. After dinner, his father asked him to step into the study. The room, once a shrine to surgical accolades, now held just one framed certificate on the center wall, Lucas's appellate court appointment. "Your mother insisted it belong here," his father said. Lucas looked at it, then at him. "Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about your grandfather, Dr. Bennett said. He used to tell me the Bennetts were builders not just of hospitals or courtrooms, but of people. I forgot that for a long time." Lucas's throat tightened. Maybe we're both remembering now. Later, driving home, under a velvet summer sky, Lucas pulled over at Oak Hill Cemetery. The grounds were quiet, lit only by the moon. He knelt beside his grandfather's grave, resting the pocket watch in his palm. "You told me the view would be beautiful," he said softly. "You were right. But it's not because I proved anyone wrong. It's because I learned to live right." He stood, slipping the watch back into his pocket, and walked toward his car with the sure step of a man who knew his own worth. Not the worth assigned by family tradition or public applause, but the kind forged through integrity, resilience, and the courage to stand tall without pushing anyone down. Lucas Bennett had built his own legacy, and for the first time, it felt like home. Lucas Bennett's journey was never about winning a battle against his family. It was about reclaiming himself. For years, he believed that success meant proving the people who doubted him wrong. But standing in that courtroom, at his grandfather's grave, and across the dinner table from a family learning to see him anew, he realized the deeper truth. The greatest victories are quiet, and they don't require someone else's defeat. The lesson is simple, but profound. Your worth is not defined by the approval you receive, nor by the traditions you're expected to uphold. True power lies in living authentically, with integrity and compassion, even in the face of rejection. Forgiveness, when it comes, is not surrender. It's the final proof that you've risen above the old battles. Lucas didn't just build a legal career. He built a life aligned with his values. That was the real legacy.